The stars above Zaran Prime shined cold and quiet, but inside the royal palace, fear whispered behind every door. The great king of the Zaran Empire sat on his crystal throne, but his heart was not at peace. His only daughter, Princess Lura, had a secret. A terrible one. She was infertile. No child, no heir, no future. This truth was hidden from the galaxy. Only a few knew, and those few feared to speak. For in the Zaran Empire, strength came from bloodlines, from children, from legacy. A princess who could not bear a child was a curse, and a kingdom without an heir was an open wound. Princess Lura stood by the high glass wall of her chamber. Looking out at the stars, she was tall, elegant, her skin shimmered like moonlight, and her eyes were filled with sadness. She had trained as a warrior, learned diplomacy, spoke 12 alien tongues, but none of that mattered. All they cared about was her womb. A knock came at her door. Her handmaid entered, silent and pale. "The Earth ship has arrived, Your Grace," the maid whispered. "They bring a human." Lura blinked, confused. "A human? Why would my father allow that?" The maid said nothing more, just lowered her head and left. Down in the royal hall, the Earth delegation entered. Tall boots echoed against golden tiles. Their leader was Captain Elias, a strong, calm human with sharp eyes and a scar over his jaw. He bowed before the king, offering a symbol of peace, a crystal sphere holding earth soil. The king smiled, but his mind was elsewhere. He had a plan later that evening. Lura was summoned. She stood before her father, her back straight but her heart heavy. "You will take the human," the king said, "as a sign of unity between our peoples." Lura's face remained calm, but inside she burned. "I am not a gift to be passed, father," she said. The king's voice turned cold. "You are a princess who failed to give me an heir. You will serve in other ways." Lura lowered her eyes and walked away, her fists tight with anger. Elias was taken to a chamber beside hers, a guest room filled with alien furniture and soft light. He looked around, curious, unafraid. That night, Lura visited him, not as a host, but as a warrior. "I know why you're here," she said, standing tall. "To be a symbol, to distract my people from my failure." Elias didn't smile, didn't bow. He just said, "I'm here because your father asked, not because I wanted to be a gift." Something in his voice caught her off guard. It was not fear, not flattery, but honesty. For the first time in years, someone looked at her like a person, not a princess. She sat beside him, curious. They spoke of Earth, of her planet, of stars. Beyond maps, the night grew long, and Lura felt a strange comfort in his presence. No pressure, no demands, just two minds meeting in peace. Over the next few days, they spent more time together. Elias explored the gardens, asked strange questions, made her laugh. He trained with her in the courtyard, matching her moves with surprising skill. One evening, while watching the twin moons rise, Lura said softly, "I was born broken." Elias looked at her, confused. "I cannot bear children," she whispered. "In my world, that is the same as being useless." Elias was silent for a moment, then said, "Where I come from, worth isn't tied to a womb." Lura looked at him, her eyes wide, as if hearing this for the first time in her life. That night, something changed. She felt something inside her, like a flicker, a warmth she hadn't known. It was small, but it was real. Her body felt alive. She didn't understand it, not yet. But deep in the palace lab, something did. The royal medics picked up a strange reading from the energy scanners. Princess Lura's biosignature had shifted. They checked again and again. One whispered, "Impossible." Another ran to the king with the data pad. The king read the screen, his face turning pale. "No, she cannot be." "Not with him," he said, rising from his throne. At that moment, Lura stood in the garden, her hand on her belly. She felt a pulse, not hers, not Elias's, but something new, something small but powerful. A secret growing in silence. She looked up at the stars, her heart racing, and far above her, ships began to move. The storm was coming, and it began with a human and a broken crown, asterisk. The stars did not blink. But in the silence of Zarin Prime, everything had changed. Something was growing inside the princess. Something the ancient bloodlines of her people believed could never happen. A life not fully alien, not fully human, but both inside the royal laboratory. Alon stayed silent, but minds screamed. The machines had picked up strange shifts in Princess Lura's inner energy. Her sterile code had altered. Energy flows that were once flat now sparked with new light. The chief geneticist, a six-eyed being named Vexel, paced in panic. "This is against natural law," he muttered. "Her kind does not bond with humans, not like this." But the scanners didn't lie. The king was not patient. He stormed into the lab, his golden robes trailing behind him like a shadow. "You told me she was empty," he roared. "You told me she could not carry life." Vexel bowed low, trembling. "Sire, we believe contact with the human changed something." The king's eyes narrowed. "The human? Elias?" Vexel hesitated, then nodded once. "He triggered a reaction we cannot explain." "Then end it," the king growled, "before anyone else finds out." But in a quiet garden, under red-leaf trees, Princess Lura already knew. She stood barefoot on the grass, the air around her warm despite the cool wind. She could feel it deep inside her, a presence, a rhythm. She wasn't afraid, she was stunned. A gentle knock came from behind. Elias stepped forward, holding 2 cups of steamed fruit tea. "You look like you saw a ghost," he said, offering her the drink. Lura didn't take it. Her eyes focused far away. "I think I'm changing," she said quietly. Elias tilted his head, calm but curious. "I felt strange before, but this feels like fire and peace at the same time," she whispered. Elias watched her, and without needing more words, he understood something was different. The next day, guards took Elias from his room. They didn't harm him, but locked him in a cold observation chamber. A smooth-voiced interrogator asked him questions. "Did you give the princess any drugs? Did you inject anything into her body? Did you come here with secret technology?" Elias laughed bitterly. "I treated her like a person, not a tool. Maybe that's your real problem." They didn't like that answer. Meanwhile, the king ordered an ancient ritual, a last test to confirm the impossible. He summoned the Oracle of Dust, a being older than the empire itself, covered in bone-colored robes. The Oracle placed a silver lens over Lura's belly. A glow formed, slow and golden. The Oracle gasped. "She carries potential beyond this galaxy." The king turned pale. "What do you mean?" "She carries a bridge," the Oracle whispered. "Between bloodlines, between powers." The king raised his voice. "Tell me how to stop it." But the Oracle only said, "You cannot stop what is already awake." Panic spread in silence. The king placed hidden eyes in the princess's rooms, guards on every hallway. He told the council that Lura was ill and needed rest. But rumors began to grow, whispers in the court. Words like miracle and shame floated in the air like poison. Lura felt the pressure. She stayed quiet during meals, refused visitors, and spoke only with her handmaid. But she also started reading scrolls about hybrid births, forbidden unions, lost technology. Every time she read more, the truth became clearer. Her people had feared human DNA not because it was weak, but because it was unstable and powerful. One night, her handmaid rushed in, pale and shaking. "They're planning to cut it out," she whispered. Lura froze. "What?" "They think it's a mutation, a threat, not a child." Lura's body moved before her mind did. She packed a bag with ancient coins, 1 old data chip, and a folded cloak. She slipped past her guards using old servant tunnels. But before she left, she made one stop. Elias sat in his cell, calm but tired, when the door opened. He looked up and saw her. Lura placed her hand on the glass. "I need your help." Elias stood, no questions asked. "Let's get out of here," he said, and smiled. the stars above Zarin Prime still looked the same, but below them, everything had changed. A forbidden life had begun, and the Empire would never be the same again. The escape was quiet but full of danger. Through forgotten tunnels and silent service shafts, Princess Lura and Elias vanished into the shadows of her own palace. Behind them, alarms slept, unaware. But in front of them, uncertainty. They were fugitives now, hunted not by enemies, but by their own blood. Their ship was small, old, and stolen from the Royal Museum hangar. It coughed into the stars like an ancient beast waking from sleep. Inside, Lura curled her arms around her belly, her breath steady but deep, the life inside her was real now, undeniable. It hummed beneath her skin, soft but strong. Elias glanced at her from the pilot seat. "We're not safe yet." She nodded, her voice calm. "I know, but we are free for now, back on Zarin Prime." The king's fury shook the royal halls. "Find her!" he roared, breaking the golden chalice against the wall. "She carries something forbidden, unnatural, an insult to the crown." He ordered the Shadow Fleet to track her across systems. No expense spared, no mercy allowed. Lura had become more than a daughter now. She was a threat to the Empire itself. Meanwhile, Lura and Elias found shelter in a forgotten station orbiting a blue gas giant. The station was abandoned, covered in rust, and filled with flickering lights and half-working systems. But to them, it was home. For the first time, Lura could rest. She slept curled up against Elias, one hand over her stomach, feeling every twitch and pulse from the life inside her. Elias scavenged the station for supplies. He fixed broken lights, repaired oxygen filters, and warmed old food packets. He did it all without complaint. Not because he was told to, but because he wanted to keep them safe. The three of them, even if one had not yet opened his eyes. Lura began to change, not just her body, but her aura, her energy signature. Once faint and cold, now blazed like a second sun. Even the ancient computers reacted, opening hidden files, forgotten maps, and relics thought long dead. One night, she placed her hand on an old panel, and it lit up in golden code. "This station is waking," Elias said. "Because of you or him," Lura smiled softly. "Maybe both. But peace never lasts in stories like theirs." A scout drone from the Shadow Fleet appeared near the gas giant. It scanned the area and vanished. They knew what it meant. "The Empire is coming," Elias said, checking his blaster. "We don't have an army," Lura whispered, touching her belly again. "We only have each other." And still, she did not run. She had run enough. They sent a message to an old contact, Kari, a rebel doctor who once healed Lura after a training accident. Kari was shocked to hear her voice, but she came, risking her ship and freedom. She examined Lura and the baby in silence, her many eyes glowing under the scanner. "This child," she whispered, "it is not alien and not human. It is evolution." Kari promised to help them. She cloaked their station in solar interference, blocking long-range scans. She left medical supplies, food, and one warning. If the Empire captures this child, they won't just kill him, they'll study him, copy him, weaponize him. Elias's jaw tightened. That will never happen. The next few weeks passed in silence and shadows. Lura grew heavier, but stronger. The child's energy affected everything. Lights flickered around him. Doors opened without touch. Machines hummed when he was near. Even Elias felt it, a strange warmth in his chest, like standing close to a quiet storm. But they were not alone. Unknown to them, the Oracle of Dust had sent a vision across the stars, to a hidden council of ancient races. "The bridge child has come," the Oracle said, "and with him a choice." The vision spread like fire, and not all who saw it wished the child to live. Back in their metal nest, Lura sat in silence, holding an old data chip to her belly. Inside the chip were Zarin stories, tales of warriors, queens, and children of prophecy. She whispered to the baby, "You are not a mistake. You are the start of something no one understands yet." And as if he heard her, the station lights blinked once, then stayed lit. Elias returned with a small smile. "He's listening already." Lyra chuckled softly. "Of course he is. He's our son." Far beyond, the stars moved, ships gathered, swords sharpened, and leaders argued behind closed doors. But inside the rusted station, hidden from all, a new future was forming. Tiny, fragile, but unstoppable. The hidden life had begun to shine, and soon the galaxy would feel its light. Asterisk in the cold chambers of the royal citadel, silence did not mean peace, it meant planning. The king stood before a galactic map, stars spinning slowly, each one a kingdom, a colony, a risk. His eyes locked onto a single blinking light, the last known location of his daughter. "She has chosen exile," he said with steel in his voice, "and now she must face the price." Around him stood the heads of houses, generals with metal limbs, advisors with floating minds. "She carries a hybrid," one whispered. "An unknown species." "A threat," said another. "And worse, it came from a human." The room pulsed with judgment, with fear disguised as pride. The king raised his hand, and they fell silent. "She will not return," he said, "unless she returns in chains or not at all." He summoned the elite trackers, the shadow hands. They wore cloaks of shifting metal, their eyes hidden behind red lenses. They hunted without mercy, without noise, without failure. Their orders were simple: find the princess, eliminate the human, extract the child. Alive if possible, but dead if easier, out beyond royal reach. The abandoned station floated in orbit like forgotten dust, but inside, life bloomed. Lyra sat in meditation, her body glowing softly. The child inside her pulsed with gentle heat, like a star forming in darkness. She whispered old songs to him, stories passed down from her mother, but her peace cracked when Elias rushed into the room, his face tight. "We've been found," he said. "Scout drone, 5 clicks away, silent, watching." Lyra stood, calm but ready. "How long before they send ships?" "Hours," Elias replied. "Maybe less." They didn't panic. Not anymore. They moved fast, packing what they could, erasing their footprints, sealing old doors. The station had hidden tunnels, remnants from forgotten wars. They ran into the cold metal veins of the station, and the station whispered back. It remembered Lyra. It remembered her child. And it opened its paths for them. Above them, the first ship arrived. Black and silent, a hunter in the void. Shadow hands dropped in, landing like ghosts. They spoke no words, only signals, only targets. One placed his hand on the wall, scanning for heat, for energy, for movement. He paused, frowning. The readings were wrong, nothing made sense. The station was too quiet, too warm, too alive down below. Lyra and Elias moved through a tunnel lit with faint blue lines. Elias glanced back, blaster ready. Lyra moved with surprising speed for someone near birth. "He's helping me," she said softly, nodding at her belly. "He's helping both of us," Elias replied, his voice full of wonder. As they reached the outer hangar, alarms screamed. The station had been breached. But something else happened. Every screen, every light, every system suddenly shut off. Then, they turned back on, glowing golden, not blue. A pulse traveled through the walls like a heartbeat. The station was no longer just hiding them, it was protecting them. Back in the royal fleet, reports came in. "The station is resisting. Ships are failing. Our weapons won't." "Lock!" the king snarled, smashing the table in rage. He turned to his generals. "This child is already breaking laws of science. Imagine what he will become in time." They all knew what he meant. If the child survived, the balance of power would shift, not just for Zarin Prime, but for every empire, every species, every throne. Meanwhile, in a backup hangar sealed for decades, Lyra placed her hand on an old ship. It lit up instantly. Waking from slumber like a dragon opening its eyes, "This was my great-grandmother's," she whispered. "A ship built with organic tech. It responds to blood." The ship opened, and they stepped inside. It hummed with warmth. lights dancing to the rhythm of the baby inside her. Elias sat at the console. "Tell me how to fly it." Lura smiled. "You don't fly it, you feel it." Outside, shadow hands swarmed the hangar walls, but the ship rose fast. It broke through the ceiling in a flash of golden fire. Elias felt the controls melt into his hands. It wasn't flying, it was riding a living comet. Lura held her belly tight, whispering, "We are not running, we are rising." The shadow fleet chased them across the starfield, but their shots missed, their engines failed. Their radars spun in circles. The child inside her twisted energy around them like a cloak. Invisible, unstoppable, the king watched from his throne room. His fists clenched. He had sent his best, and they had failed. His voice shook the room. "Then call the Ancient Ones. The child will be hunted by more than men." But Lura and Elias didn't stop. They set course for a dead world. Place no ship dared go, because that world held the last key, a secret lost to time. But waiting for blood to return, and the child still unborn, dreamed of stars, and waited to awaken fully. The world they landed on had no name anymore. Long ago, it was wiped from the star charts, forbidden even in whispers. The ground cracked with silence, the air thick with memories. Once, it was a place of light. Now it held only echoes. But for Lura, it felt like home, and the unborn child kicked for the very first time as their ship touched the cursed soil. The skies above were violet, with twin suns that refused to shine. Strange ruins covered the surface machines that had grown. Roots, statues worn down by storms of time. Elias looked around, his boots crunching on black glass. "Why here?" he asked. Lura placed a hand on a stone marked in her family's language. "Because this is where the old blood began, before we forgot who we were." Inside the ruins, they found a hidden sanctuary. The walls pulsed softly when Lura entered, as if recognizing her. Her body ached, sharp waves of pain like thunder under her skin. "It's time," she whispered, falling to her knees. Elias caught her just in time, lowering her onto a soft bed of ancient moss. The room sealed itself, and the machines hummed. Lights formed in the air, circling her like spirits. The birth had begun. Lura cried out, but not in fear. The energy within her spilled into the room, bending gravity itself. Metal around her twisted, walls cracked, but nothing touched her. Elias knelt beside her, holding her hand. "You're doing great," he whispered. Though his hands trembled, he had never seen power like this, not even in war. The baby arrived in a flash of light and wind. No scream, no tears, just silence. Then, the sound of a single breath, soft, steady, strong. Lura opened her eyes and saw him. Small, golden-skinned, eyes wide and glowing like twin stars. The child blinked and every light in the room responded. A single thought, not spoken, but felt, echoed through the ancient hall. "I am here." Elias stepped back, stunned. He felt warmth in his chest. A pull, not physical, but deep. The child turned toward him, not with fear, but with recognition. The machines around them began to float. Stone blocks lifted into the air, swirling slowly. The child had not just been born, he had awakened. Lura held him close, tears falling, not from pain but awe. "You are the future they feared," she whispered, "and the hope I never dared to dream." The child cooed, and the wind outside shifted. Storms parted, skies cleared, and the suns finally warmed the ground for the first time in centuries. But far away, the moment did not go unnoticed. In the throne room of Zarin Prime, ancient sensors screamed. A burst of unknown energy lit up across star maps, impossible to trace, but too loud to ignore. "He has been born," the Oracle of Dust said. Her voice trembling, the king stood without a word, his face pale. He turned to his generals. "Gather every fleet, every spy, every weapon." "This is no longer a search," he growled. "This is war." Back on the forgotten world, Lura and Elias emerged. From the ruins, their ship, now bonded to the baby's energy, opened automatically as they stepped inside. The ship glowed brighter than before. It knew its new master, Elias, strapped in, setting a course through the star fields. But before they could leave, the child reached out one tiny hand toward the console. The ship jumped without input, without countdown. It skipped across space, bending reality like cloth. They reappeared light years away in a place no one knew. "He's guiding us," Lyra said, holding the child tight. "And protecting us," Elias added, watching as enemy probes searching nearby were instantly erased by invisible waves of energy. They named him Kale, a name from both their cultures meaning light reborn. Kale didn't cry like normal babies. He listened, watched, and once, without touching anything, he closed a wound on Lyra's hand with a glowing breath. They both stared, speechless. "He's more than a child," Elias whispered. "He is the first of a new kind," Lyra answered. News spread across space like wildfire. Whispers of a child born from alien royalty and a human traveler. Of machines bowing, of fleets malfunctioning near his presence. Some called him dangerous, others called him divine. But all feared what they didn't understand. And while war brewed behind distant suns, Lyra looked down at Kale and smiled. "I don't care what they say," she whispered. "You are mine, and I will protect you, always." Kale blinked once, and the stars seemed to blink back. The galaxy was shifting, and the child of two worlds had just taken his first breath. Asterisk. The throne room of Zaran Prime burned with rage. Flames danced inside the king's eyes as he stood before the High War Council. Every star system around him whispered one word: Kale. The child, the hybrid, the threat to everything he had built, and worst of all, his blood ran in that child's veins. He slammed his fist into the war table, cracking the surface. "He was born under my name," the king growled, "but he belongs to no crown, no law, and no order." The Oracle of Dust bowed her head, her voice dry as sand. "Sire, the child is bonded to cosmic memory, older than any empire," the king shouted back. "Then we will erase the memory itself." The Great Armada was summoned: 40 dreadnoughts, 10 eclipse carriers, and hundreds of hunter ships. At the center was the royal juggernaut, Oblivion's spine, blacker than space itself, shaped like a blade cutting through time. The king would not send messengers this time. He would lead the attack himself. Far across the galaxy, Lyra held Kale in her arms as their ship floated quietly above a silver moon. Kale had grown faster than natural, already walking, already speaking in small words. Elias taught him human stories. Lyra told him ancient songs. But even in play, Kale glowed with strange energy. He could lift objects without touching them, talk to machines without words, and sometimes the stars themselves blinked in rhythm with his heart. That night, Kale woke up suddenly, his small hands shaking. "They're coming," he whispered. Elias looked out the viewport and saw an unnatural ripple across the stars. A fleet larger than anything ever launched before. It was coming for them, and it would not stop. They landed on a nearby moon, silent, empty, filled with ancient ruins buried in ice. Elias began setting defenses, digging deep, hiding the ship. Lyra stood guard while Kale touched the frozen ground and whispered. "The stone remembers," he said. "It wants to help." The ruins began to glow, old lights waking after thousands of years. The moon was not empty, it was waiting. Then, the darkness came. Oblivion's spine appeared first, eclipsing half the sky. The king stood at its helm, his eyes locked onto the tiny moon below. "She defied me," he whispered. "She birthed the god, and now she will pay." He launched the first attack, not a warning, not a signal, a full-powered orbital beam aimed straight at the moon's surface. But before the beam could hit, something moved. A wall of shimmering light rose from the ground. Kale's energy, amplified by the ruins, the beam broke into thousands of pieces, scattering like rain. The fleet commanders gasped, but the king only stared harder. "So the child wants to fight," he said. "Then let him taste war." Hundreds of ships descended, raining fire and metal. Elias manned the cannons. Lyra flew, The old fighter ship in loops, distracting the attackers. Kale stood at the center of the ruins. Arms raised, he didn't speak, didn't shout, he just focused. And the moon itself responded. Pillars of ancient metal rose from the ice, forming a massive ring of protection. Enemy missiles exploded before touching the ground. Fighter ships lost control near Kale, spinning wildly before crashing into nothing. Even time felt strange around him, slow, stretched, like a dream pulling back from a scream. Then Kale looked up at the largest ship, Oblivion's spine. His eyes glowed brighter than ever before. Inside the king's throne room, systems flickered. The ship shook violently. Impossible, the king hissed, gripping the arms of his throne. Kale had reached them, through space, through shields, through hatred. The child sent one thought into the heart of the flagship. Stop, and everything did, for 10 seconds. The entire fleet froze in space, weapons offline, engines dead. Time itself paused, only Kale moved, surrounded by light and ancient power. Then it all came back at once. Ships rebooted, alarms blared, commanders screamed. But fear had already rooted in their hearts. They had seen the edge of something beyond control, beyond empire. They had seen a child who could unmake war with a thought. The king trembled, not from weakness, but from truth. This was not a child anymore. It was the beginning of something that no throne could rule. Lura stood at Kale's side as the dust cleared. She looked up at the wounded fleet limping away. They came to kill a baby, she whispered, and left fearing a god. Elias put a hand on her shoulder. What? Now? She looked down at her son, now calm, now smiling. Now, we show them peace, she said. Or we show them nothing at all, and above them, the stars rearranged just slightly, as if making space for a new kind of story. The galaxy did not speak for 3 days. No ships moved, no wars burned, no messages crossed the stars. Because the impossible had happened. A human and an alien princess had given birth to something new, and the old powers had failed to kill it. On the silent moon where Kale was born, light still shimmered in the air. Machines built before memory whispered around him. The ancient ruins hummed with peace, not power. Kale stood barefoot on the sacred stone, staring at the rising suns. He was only a child, but the galaxy now looked at him like he was a god. Lura watched her son from a distance, her arms crossed, her eyes heavy. He had done something no one expected, not by war, but by will. He stopped an empire. Not by bloodshed, but by presence. Elias sat nearby, carving a message into a slab of stone. It's time we go back, he said. But not to surrender. Lura nodded slowly. To build, across the stars, rumors spread like wind and dry. Grass, the hybrid lives, they whispered. His eyes burned through steel, others said. Whole systems that once bowed to the Zarin Empire began questioning their loyalty. Why follow fear when hope had been born? When Kale and his parents returned to Zarin Prime, they didn't bring a fleet. They arrived in silence, their ship glowing softly like a candle in the dark. The royal guard surrounded them, but none moved. Every sensor flickered, every machine paused, every breath held tight. Kale walked through the crowd, not afraid, not arrogant, just calm. The great throne room still held its scars. The king, old now, worn and bitter, sat slouched in his throne. He looked at his daughter then. At the child. Do you come to take my crown? He asked, voice sharp like cracked glass. Kale said nothing, just looked at him, and the king, for the first time in his life, looked away. Lura stepped forward, her voice strong. You ruled by fear, by silence, by the past. This child is the future, and we're not here to take anything, she said. We're here to offer something better. The king laughed bitterly, and what's better than power? Elias answered from behind. Peace. That word hit harder than any weapon, because deep down, even the king knew he was tired. He had built walls around stars, but they couldn't keep time away. His empire was crumbling, not because of War, but because it had no heart left. In that moment, he stood up slowly, removed his crown, and placed it on the empty seat beside him. Then he walked away without another word. The crown stayed untouched because no one wanted it anymore. Kale stood at the center of the room, and light broke through the tall glass ceiling. Not artificial, not summoned real sunlight. For the first time in generations, warmth touched the floor of the throne room. That day, a council was formed not of warlords, but of builders, farmers, thinkers, healers. Each system sent one voice, and none held more weight than the other. At the head of this council sat no king, no queen, just Kale, with his mother and father beside him, guiding, not ruling. And Kale, though still a child, spoke his first words before the galaxy. "We are many, but we can be one." That sentence was etched into the great unity monument that now stands where the throne once was. Below it, in both Earth and Zarin languages, it reads, "Born from two worlds, but belongs to all." Years passed, and the stars no longer feared his name. They celebrated it. War fleets were dismantled. Their metal turned into homes and schools. Old enemies became neighbors. New life spread where ash once ruled. But not everyone accepted peace. In dark corners of the galaxy, some still plotted, still feared the unknown. And Kale knew that darkness never truly ends, but he also knew he was not alone. His people were many now, humans and aliens, side by side, bound not by fear, but by story, by shared breath, by the simple wish to live and grow. And Kale, glowing softly in the dusk of a quiet world, would protect them, not with fire, but with light. The boy who was never meant to be became the hope the galaxy never knew it needed. And the empire that was once broken became the beginning of something far greater. The new empire of peace, led by the child of stars.